The wind swept across the wide plains of Montana like a restless spirit searching for a home. Dust rolled in soft waves across the road, and the sinking sun painted the distant mountains in orange and gold. It was the kind of evening that made most folks hurry indoors, but Emma Clarke had nowhere to hurry to. At 20 years old, she stood on the edge of the Dawson Ridge Ranch fence line with a small bundle clutched in her hands. Her dress was worn thin at the elbows, and her boots had taken her farther than they were ever meant to go. She had walked miles from the last town, praying this ranch was real, hoping the letter she carried was worth more than the paper it was written on. The ranch stretched out before her in quiet power. Acres of land, a long white-fenced pasture, a big barn with red paint faded by years of storms, and a warm, golden light glowing through the windows of the main house. She had imagined it 100 times while walking, just not this big, not this beautiful. But she also knew beauty usually belonged to someone with power, and that someone was Braden Carter. People in town whispered his name like he was half legend, half warning, richest cattleman in the county, strong as the land he worked. A man who carried grief the way other men carried rifles. He lived alone on all this land, they said. Alone ever since the tragedy that broke him. Emma had tried not to think too hard about that part. She pressed the letter to her chest and stepped forward. Each step felt like it could change the course of her life, or end it. She needed work. She needed food. She needed somewhere she could sleep without fear for the first time in months. When she reached the porch, her legs trembled. She knocked once. The sound echoed. The door opened. Braden Carter filled the doorway like a shadow carved out of the last light of day. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair falling slightly over his brow. His gray-blue eyes were steady, watchful, a little guarded. A flannel shirt stretched across his chest, and his hands looked like they could break a piece of wood in half without meaning to. For a moment, he didn't speak. He simply studied her, not with judgment, but with a cautious stillness that made her throat tighten. Emma swallowed. "Sir, I have a letter." She held it out with shaking fingers. He took it without breaking eye contact, and she found herself holding her breath. He scanned the paper quickly, then looked up again. "You're Samuel Clarke's girl," he said. Emma nodded. "Yes, sir. My father. He worked for you years back." Braden's eyes softened just a little, like her father's name had touched something old in him. Samuel was a good man. He stepped slightly aside. "Come in. You look like you could fall over." She hesitated, but his voice didn't hold danger, just quiet authority. Just someone unused to company. She stepped inside. Warmth hit her first. The house smelled of coffee, wood smoke, and something faintly sweet, maybe the memory of someone who once baked here. The room was neat, but lonely in a way she felt in her bones. Braden folded the letter and slid it into his pocket. "It says you're looking for work," he said, "and a place to stay." "Yes," she forced herself to meet his eyes. "I can cook and clean and sew, and I don't need much space, just somewhere safe." Her voice wavered on the last word, and she hoped he didn't notice. He noticed. His jaw tightened, just slightly. "You alone?" Emma nodded. "No other family?" She shook her head. He looked at her for a long moment, and she wondered if he could see every mile she had walked, every fear she carried. Every night she had slept with one hand on her belongings so no one could steal them from her. Finally he spoke. "There's a spare room you can use. It ain't fancy, but it's clean. You can start tomorrow." Emma's chest loosened with relief so sharp it almost hurt. "Thank you. I won't let you down." He cleared his throat. "I'll show you the room." She followed him down the hallway, her bundle clutched tightly. Her footsteps felt loud on the wooden floor. The room he opened for her was small, but warm. A narrow bed, a quilt folded neatly across it, and a window that looked out over the darkening fields. She stepped inside, her fingers brushing the quilt as if to test if it was real. "You can settle in," Braden said. "If you're hungry, there's stew in the pot. Help yourself." Emma turned to him, her voice small. "Why are you helping me, sir?" His eyes held hers, steady and storm-colored. "Because your father once helped me when I needed it, and because you look like someone who hasn't had a gentle thing in a long time." Her breath caught. Something in her chest twisted painfully. Braden. She stopped herself, embarrassed she had said his name so softly. Mr. Carter, I don't want to be any trouble. You're not trouble, he said quietly. Just tired. He turned to leave, but she took one step toward him without thinking. Her hand brushed his sleeve. Barely a touch, but enough to make his posture go still. She didn't know why she said it. Maybe because she finally felt safe. Maybe because she had never said it to anyone before. Be gentle with me, she whispered. He looked at her, really looked, and something deep in his expression shifted. Not lust. Not possession, just a kind of careful promise. He stepped close enough that she could feel his warmth. I will, he said softly, only if you truly want me to. Her heart thudded like a wild animal in a small space. For the first time in a long time, Emma Clarke felt like she belonged somewhere. For the first time in a long time, Braden Carter felt the quiet of his house change, and neither of them could walk away now. Morning came quietly to Dawson Ridge, the sun rising slow over the Montana hills like it didn't want to disturb the world just yet. Light spilled into Emma's small room, warm and gold, painting her quilt in soft colors. She woke with a start, unsure for a moment where she was. Then she remembered the warm kitchen, the steady voice, the safety she had felt for the first time in months. Braden Carter had taken her in. A stranger, but somehow not a stranger at all. She washed up quickly, braided her hair, and stepped into the hallway. Her heart thudded in her chest, unsure what this new day would bring. The kitchen was quiet, except for the crackle of the stove. Braden sat at the table, a cup of coffee in his hands. His broad shoulders were relaxed in a way that made him look almost younger in the morning light. When he noticed her, he didn't smile exactly, but his eyes softened. "Morning," he said. Her voice came out shy. "Morning, sir." "You can call me Braden," he said, "if you're comfortable with that." She nodded, though her cheeks warmed at the sound of his name on her tongue. He pushed a mug toward her. "There's coffee if you want it. I don't know how you take it, but there's sugar in the tin." She wrapped her hands around the warm cup. The steam rose between them like a quiet invitation. "I wanted to start working today," she said, "if that's all right." He nodded once. "It is. But you ain't working yourself sick. You'll take breaks. You'll eat when the food is hot, and you'll sleep when you need to." She blinked at him, startled. No one in her life had ever cared if she rested, not even her father, hard as he had worked. "Yes," she whispered. "I understand." He stood, picked up his hat, and headed toward the door. "I'll be out in the north pasture. If you need me, just call." She watched him leave, her hands tightening around the cup. The door shut behind him, and the house fell into a peaceful silence. She cleaned the kitchen first, sweeping, wiping, organizing. Every corner held a story she didn't know yet. There was a second plate at the back of the cupboard, a woman's apron hung neatly by the pantry door, a tin with a faded handwriting label that simply read, "Spice." Someone had once loved this place. Someone had once loved Braden. Emma paused, fingers brushing the edge of the old apron. A quiet sadness settled inside her, gentle but heavy. She didn't want to replace anyone. She didn't want to step where she didn't belong. She just wanted a home. And maybe someday she could be a part of his. By afternoon, she had cooked a pot of stew and baked a small loaf of bread. The house smelled warm and alive, as if it had been waiting for her hands to wake it up again. When Braden finally returned, dust on his boots and sun on his face, he stopped in the doorway. He didn't say a word. He simply breathed in the air, the scent of spices and bread wrapping around him like a memory. Then his eyes found her. "You've been busy," he said quietly. "I hope I didn't overstep," she replied. I wanted to help." "You did good." His gaze softened. "Real good." Dinner was quiet at first. Emma sat across from him, her hands folded in her lap. The only sound was the clink of his spoon as he tasted the stew. He paused. She froze. Then he set the spoon down slowly, carefully, like he wanted to make sure he didn't speak too fast. "This is the best stew I've had in a long time." The words struck her harder than she expected, warming her from the inside. She lowered her head, blinking quickly. "I'm glad," she whispered. Their eyes met for a moment, and something warm flickered between them. A soft spark. A question neither of them had words for yet. After dinner, Emma stood to clean up, but Braden reached out and gently stopped her hand. "You cooked. I'll wash." Her breath caught. She wasn't used to kindness like this. Not from a man, not from anyone. So she stepped back and watched him at the sink, the lamplight catching on his strong arms, the water running as he worked quietly. He looked so steady, so certain, like the whole house was anchored to him, and somehow she didn't feel scared anymore. When he finished, he dried his hands and turned to her. "Your father once told me something," he said that folks like us learn early how to survive. Hard way, cold way. But if we're lucky, one day we might find someone who doesn't want anything from us except the chance to see us smile. Emma's breath hitched. "My father said that?" Braden nodded. "He did." She looked down, tears stinging her eyes. She didn't cry, not fully, but her voice trembled like a small bird's wing. "I haven't smiled much in a long time." He stepped closer, not touching, not crowding, just close enough that she felt the warmth of his presence. "You will," he said quietly, "if you want to." Her heart fluttered painfully. I think I already have." A silence filled the space between them, soft and careful, not the silence of strangers, the silence of two hearts opening, inch by inch. Later that night, as Emma stood in the hallway with her hand on her bedroom door, Braden paused at his own door across from hers. The lamplight fell between them like a thin golden ribbon. "Emma," he said. She looked up. "I meant what I said last night. I'll be gentle with you, in every way. You don't ever have to fear me." "I know," she whispered, and she did. He gave a small nod, not a goodbye, just a promise held in silence. She went to sleep that night, with the moonlight on her quilt and a warm ache blooming slowly in her chest. For the first time in her life, she wasn't running. For the first time in his life, he wasn't grieving alone, and neither of them knew what waited on the horizon. But they knew it was something they would face together. The next morning came with a soft light spreading across the fields, turning the tall grass golden. Emma woke with a sense of calm she hadn't felt in years. She washed, dressed, and stepped into the hallway just as Braden opened his door. For a moment, they both froze. The house was quiet, the morning air cool, and something gentle passed between them, a silent good morning that felt warmer than words. He tipped his hat, though he wasn't wearing one, and she felt her cheeks warm. They shared breakfast in the quiet kitchen. She poured the coffee. He sliced the bread. Their movements had fallen into a natural rhythm, as if they had been doing this for years instead of days. But life had a way of testing new peace. By noon, the sky darkened. Thick gray clouds rolled over the plains, and the wind shifted cold. Braden stepped onto the porch, scanning the horizon. "Storm's coming," he said. "A bad one." Emma joined him, the wind tugging at her braid. "Do you need help?" He glanced down at her, concern softening his steady gaze. "Not outside. You stay in the house, where it's safe." But she shook her head. "Let me help. I don't want you out there alone." For a moment, he studied her, the courage in her eyes, the quiet strength she didn't even realize she had. He nodded once. "Come on then." Quote, They rushed through the yard, pulling tools into the barn, shutting the chicken coop, tying down anything the wind could claim. By the time they hurried back into the house, the first drops of rain were falling. Braden shut the door behind them and leaned against it, rain dripping from his hair. Emma was breathing fast, her dress damp, her cheeks flushed with the effort. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. The storm hit hard. Rain slammed against the windows. Wind howled along the roof. Thunder cracked like a shotgun across the sky. Emma flinched at the first loud boom. Braden noticed. He stepped closer, but didn't touch her. He just stood near, steady as a wall. "You all right?" he asked. She nodded, though her fingers tightened on her skirt. Together they moved to the living room, where he started a fire. The flames grew, warm and bright, pushing back the fear that tried to crawl into the corners of the house. Emma sat on the rug near the hearth, her knees drawn up. The firelight painted her face in soft gold. Braden sat beside her, leaving just enough space between them to be respectful, but close enough for her to feel he was there. After a while, she spoke quietly. "I used to be afraid of storms," she said. "When I was little, I'd hide under the table. My father would try to calm me, but I always felt like the whole sky was coming apart." Braden listened with a stillness that made her feel safe enough to continue. "I guess some fears stay with you," she whispered. He looked into the fire before answering. "Fears don't disappear, but sometimes they get quieter when someone sits with you through them." Her breath caught. She turned her head, and their eyes met. "Is that what you're doing?" she asked softly. He held her gaze, his voice low. "Yeah, if you want me to." The fire crackled, thunder rolled. But the storm inside the house softened. Emma didn't think. She moved on instinct. Her hand reached for his, her fingers small and trembling. For a moment, he didn't move. Then, gently, he folded his much larger hand around hers. It was not a bold touch, not a dangerous one, just warm and steady and real. "Braden?" she whispered. His thumb brushed lightly across her knuckles. "When I asked you to be gentle, I didn't mean only with my heart." He inhaled sharply, but not with shock, more like something heavy inside him finally understood. "Emma," he said, her name tight with emotion, "gentle is all I know how to be with you." Her eyes brimmed with tears, not of fear, but relief. She leaned into him, her head resting against his shoulder. He turned slightly so she fit perfectly under his arm, her small frame tucked safely into his. Rain battered the house, but inside, the world softened. After a long moment, Braden spoke. "I wasn't expecting anyone to come into my life again," he said. "I thought the ranch was all I'd ever have, but then you showed up on my porch, tired, scared, and trying to stand brave, and something in me woke up." Emma's voice trembled. "I didn't think anyone would ever look at me like I mattered." "You matter," he said, "more than you know." Quote. She lifted her head to look at him, her eyes full of something warm and shining. He brushed a thumb across her cheek where a stray tear had fallen. She didn't pull away. She leaned into the touch, her breath catching in her throat. "Braden," she whispered, "can I tell you something? Anything. I think I'm not scared anymore. Not with you." His expression softened in a way she had never seen before. A mixture of relief, affection, and something deeper. Something he hadn't let himself feel in years. He leaned forward slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. Her eyes fluttered shut as his forehead touched hers, a tender, careful touch that felt more intimate than anything she had ever known. Thunder rolled again, but it sounded far away now. Their breaths mingled, their hands stayed intertwined, and the warmth between them was no longer a spark. It was a steady fire. "Emma," he whispered, "I'll wait for whatever you're ready for. I'll never push you. I'll never hurt you." Her voice was barely a breath. "I know. That's why I trust you." Quote. And in the shelter of the storm, wrapped in his arms, Emma Clarke felt something she had never felt before. She felt safe. She felt chosen. She felt loved, gently, deeply, and without question. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, two lives quietly intertwined in the glow of a warm fire and a promise that neither of them had spoken aloud yet, but both already believed. Because love, out on the wild plains, didn't need grand gestures. It needed a soft whisper, a steady hand, and two hearts willing to meet in the middle of a storm. Together,